Hi everyone, in today's video we are going to tackle significant figures in multiplication and division. Now don't worry, we're not doing mixed operations yet, we're just going to focus on multiplication and division today. So let's see how we do that. The first thing that we need to do is we need to establish our rule that we use with multiplication, division, and significant figures. That rule is actually really simple. The number with the fewest number of sig figs is going to limit how many sig figs we have in our answer. Let's take a look at my first example right here. Really simple multiplication. I'm just multiplying two numbers here. And this is what my calculator spits out. Now again, do not trust your calculator. It will not give you the correct number of sig figs. 9 times out of 10, it will not give you the correct number of sig figs. So what we need to do is we actually need to count up how many sig figs we have in each of the numbers we used for this calculation. Now this one's easy because we only use two numbers. So for my first number here, my 3.060, I have 4 sig figs. I'm just going to put a 4 up here. And in my second number, my 75.1, I have 3 sig figs. So for this operation, my 75.1 is going to limit me because it has the fewest number of sig figs. That means my answer needs to have 3 sig figs. Well, again, if I look at what my calculator gave me, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 6 sig figs. So way too many sig figs. All right, if I'm going to have 3 sig figs, that means I'm going to need to round to the ones place, and that's going to round my answer to 230. Now we need to be careful here because that trailing 0 is not significant. Now, there are two ways I can make it significant. The first way is do what I've done here and put the decimal place there. That is the quick and dirty way to do this. The better way to do it is to convert it into scientific notation as I have done here, because that means that that 0 is automatically significant. So when you run into problems like this, again, remember you've got two ways to do it, but the better way is to go with scientific notation. You guys know I'm a huge fan of scientific notation anyway. Let's go on to our second example down here. So this is just a division problem. Again, I'm only using two numbers just to keep it really simple. Here is the number that my calculator spits out when I put this in. Now again, I'm not going to trust my calculator to give me the correct number of sig figs, even though I do trust it to do the math right. So let's count up how many sig figs each of my numbers in the problem had. So if I take a look at my first number here, I see I have 4 sig figs. And this number here, I have 2 sig figs. So for my second example, my 2 sig figs, my 3.1 is going to limit me. That means I need 2 sig figs. I need to round to this place here. So that would round up to 0.0015. Again, you know me, I love my scientific notation. I can also write my answer like this. That also has 2 sig figs to it. All right, those are pretty easy, just 2 numbers. Let's go on to an example that has more than 2 numbers. So if we look up here, I threw one up here that has lots and lots of numbers, and it's got multiplication and it has division with it too. So let's just take this step by step. So what I did first was I first simplified this division here. Now, I'm not going to do any rounding, any sig figs until I get to the very, very end of my problem. So this 1400 number is what my calculator spit out. I'm writing the whole thing down. All right, I'm doing the same thing up here. I simplified this numerator to right here. Again, that's what my calculator spit out, so I'm going to write all of that down. And for my next step here, I just simplified even further. I simplified this fraction to here. Again, I'm writing down all of the numbers that my calculator gives me. And then for my final calculation, that is what the calculator gives me. Now I need to go back and decide, okay, how many sig figs do I need in my answer? I've done all of these calculations. And you can go step by step and apply all your rules, but when you're doing all multiplication division, there's no mixed operations here. We're not adding in any addition, subtraction. You can just still use your one rule. You can count up all your sig figs and find the one that has the smallest. So let's change up color here so we can see my numbers. I'm going to go back to my original problem right here, and I'm going to count up sig figs in each of the numbers I used. So I have 4 sig figs here. My denominator also has 4 sig figs. In my numerator, I have 3 sig figs here. I have 4 again here. And in my denominator, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sig figs here. So once I have all my sig figs in my original equation, I go to whichever one has my fewest number of sig figs. And in that case, that is this guy right here. So then I know my answer, I need to limit it to 3 sig figs. So if I come down to my answer, there's where I'm going to round if I'm going to go to 3 sig figs. Again, that just rounds to 135, but my favorite scientific notation is right here that also has 3 sig figs. So again, if you're doing a longer calculation, but it's all multiplication division, you don't have to worry about rounding each step. Actually, if you round each step, you can introduce rounding error. I recommend waiting until the very end and then deciding how many sig figs you need and round only at the very end. Last example here, I'm going to switch back to my blue for my last example. Last example here, I threw in some scientific notation because, again, I just love scientific notation. All right, so this is just a simple division problem. Here is the answer that my calculator spits out. So I need to decide, again, how many sig figs I actually need for that. So I go back to my original equation and I see that I have 4 sig figs up here, and in my denominator I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sig figs down here. So my 4 sig figs is going to limit me. I need 4 sig figs, so I'm going to round to this place right here, and bam, here is my answer. Now I do want to caution you, because if you are not putting scientific notation into your calculator properly, your calculator may spit out this answer, which has the right beginning number, but you can see your exponent here is wrong. So when you're putting scientific notation in your calculator, make sure you're using those 2 capital E's. You see the double E's? Make sure you use that in your calculator and you don't just put it in as times 10 up caret -5, because that will oftentimes cause your calculator to give you the wrong answer, and you don't want to miss a question because your calculator has given you the wrong answer. So make sure you're using, again, those double capital E's when you put scientific notation in your calculator, and that will make sure that you never miss a question just because your calculator thinks you're putting in 2 numbers instead of 1 number. Okay, so hopefully after this video you are masters at doing your sig figs, at multiplication and division, and you've got no trouble using standard notation and scientific notation. I do hope this video helped. I will make sure to link up videos on doing significant figures with your addition, subtraction, and also with your mixed operations. Thanks so much for watching.